In a world tangled with emotion, where we are pulled and prodded by the tides of circumstances, it is easy to become entangled in a web of suffering. We are weighed down by anger, crippled by fear, ensnared by grief. Yet, there is a way out of this labyrinth, a path that leads not to apathy, but to mastery. This path has been walked for centuries by those who understood a fundamental truth about human nature. We are not the slaves of our emotions. We are their masters. And to wield this mastery, one must learn the art of detachment. Let us not confuse detachment with indifference, for they are not the same. Indifference is the absence of care, while detachment is the presence of control. It is to experience life fully, its joys, its pains, without allowing them to control us. The Stoics taught us that emotions, left unchecked, have the power to chain us, to cloud our reason, and to rob us of our peace. But, with discipline and wisdom, we can break those chains. We are not alone in this pursuit. History is replete with guides, great minds who have left behind the tools we need to unburden ourselves of emotional baggage. Seneca, Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius, these are names not just of men, but of wayfarers who have explored the terrain of human emotion and returned to tell us what they have learned. Their lessons are hard-earned, drawn from lives lived in the crucible of hardship. And they tell us, unequivocally, that the art of detachment is not merely a luxury. It is essential for a life of virtue and tranquility. The tyranny of emotion. Imagine, for a moment, that we are travelers on a stormy sea. The waves represent the emotions that swell within us: fear, anger, desire, sorrow. They crash against the ship, battering us from all sides. When we allow these emotions to guide our course, we drift aimlessly, at the mercy of forces beyond our control. We lash out in rage, cower in fear, chase after fleeting desires, or sink into despair. And so the ship veers, not toward our true destination, but wherever the winds of emotion blow us. Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher who spent much of his life in slavery, understood this well. He taught that it is not events themselves that disturb us, but the judgments we place upon them. Men are disturbed not by things, he said, but by the views which they take of them. The world may be chaotic, but our minds need not be. It is within our power to choose how we respond to any circumstance. In this lies the key to detachment, not in avoiding emotion, but in reframing how we perceive it. Detachment begins when we recognize that most of what we suffer is self-inflicted. We allow external events, over which we have no control, to dictate our inner state. We suffer not because of what happens to us, but because we cling to what we think should have happened instead. This attachment to our desires, expectations, and fears is the root of our emotional turmoil. The Stoic lesson here is simple, though far from easy: let go. Let go of the need to control outcomes. Let go of the illusion that the world owes us anything. Let go of the false belief that external things, wealth, status, relationships, are the source of our happiness. As Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, begin each day by telling yourself, "Today I shall be meeting with interference, ingratitude, insolence, disloyalty, ill will, and selfishness, all of them due to the offender's ignorance of what is good or evil." This is not pessimism, but realism. It is the armor of detachment, a way to fortify ourselves against the unpredictable tides of life. The practice of inner fortitude. Detachment is not passive. It requires active practice, and that practice is found in cultivating inner fortitude. Fortitude, as the Stoics saw it, is not mere endurance but resilience. It is the ability to remain unshaken in the face of adversity, to maintain one's composure and dignity when the world around us is crumbling. Consider the example of Seneca, a man of great wealth and influence who nonetheless lived with the awareness that everything he had could be taken from him at any moment. In his letters, Seneca frequently reminded himself of the impermanence of life, advising his readers to rehearse misfortune so that they might be prepared for it. It is in times of security that the spirit should be preparing itself for difficult times, he wrote. This is the Stoic practice of premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. By contemplating worst-case scenarios, by mentally rehearsing loss, illness, exile, and death, we inoculate ourselves against the shock of their eventual arrival. But this is not morbid pessimism, it is wisdom. When we understand that loss is inevitable, we are less likely to cling to the things we have. We begin to see life's fleeting moments for what they are, temporary gifts, not permanent possessions. And in this recognition, we find freedom, the freedom to live fully in the present, without the weight of fear or longing. Fortitude, then, is the practice of accepting reality as it is, without complaint or resistance. It is not a denial of pain or suffering, but an acknowledgement that these are part of the human experience. As Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Every obstacle is an opportunity for growth. Every challenge is a chance to prove our strength. To detach is not to avoid hardship, but to embrace it as a necessary part of life's journey. The illusion of control. Perhaps the most difficult aspect of detachment is the realization that we are in control of very little. The Stoics divided life into two categories, things that are within our control and things that are not. Our actions, our thoughts, our judgments, these are within our control. Everything else, other people's opinions, the weather, the past, the future, lies beyond our influence. And yet, it is precisely these external things that we obsess over, worry about, and attach ourselves to. We spend our lives chasing after things we cannot hold onto: success, validation, love, security. We believe that if we can just attain these things, we will find lasting happiness. But the Stoics understood that this is a mirage. True contentment does not come from external circumstances, but from the state of our mind. As Epictetus said, wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. To practice detachment is to constantly remind ourselves of this truth. It is to cultivate a mindset that is not swayed by the ups and downs of fortune. This is what the Stoics called apatheia, not the absence of feeling, but the absence of destructive emotion. It is the calm center of the storm, the place where we can observe the chaos around us without being swept away by it. This does not mean we should be passive in life. Far from it. The Stoics were active participants in the world, deeply engaged with their communities and responsibilities. But they did so with the understanding that their happiness did not depend on the outcomes of their efforts. Do not seek for things to happen the way you want them to, said Epictetus, but rather wish that what happens happens the way it happens, then you will be happy. The freedom of detachment. When we learn to detach, we discover a paradox: in letting go, we gain everything. By releasing our grip on the things we cannot control, we find a sense of peace that is unshakable. We are no longer tossed about by the waves of fortune. We no longer suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, because we have come to understand that fortune itself is irrelevant to our inner state. This is the ultimate freedom that the Stoics sought, not the freedom to do whatever we want, but the freedom to be undisturbed by whatever happens. It is the freedom to live fully, without fear or regret, without the constant gnawing anxiety of what might happen tomorrow. It is the freedom to face death, not with dread, but with acceptance. It is not death that a man should fear, said Marcus Aurelius, but never beginning to live. And so we return to the core of Stoic detachment, the realization that life is fleeting, that we are but a moment in the vastness of time, and that we can control only how we choose to live that moment. In this realization, there is a profound liberation. We no longer need to cling to anything, for we see that everything is already passing away. What remains, what endures, is our character, our ability to navigate life's storms with grace, courage, and wisdom. Conclusion: the call to mastery. We stand, all of us, on the edge of the same precipice. We do not know what tomorrow holds. We cannot predict the twists and turns that life will take. But we can choose how we respond. We can choose to cling to our desires and expectations, or we can choose to let go. We can choose to be ruled by our emotions, or we can choose to master them. The Stoics, in their wisdom, have given us the tools we need to free ourselves from the emotional baggage that weighs us down. They have shown us that detachment is not a retreat from life, but an embrace of it in its truest form. It is the art of living with full awareness, of facing each moment as it comes, without fear or attachment. We are not passive observers of our lives. We are the craftsmen of our own minds, the architects of our own peace. And in the art of detachment, we find not just the key to enduring life's hardships, but the key to living fully, freely, and with purpose. This is the call to mastery, not over others, not over the external world, but over ourselves. To be free of emotional baggage is to be truly free. And in that freedom, we find the strength to live a life of virtue, a life of meaning, a life of profound inner peace. We are not at the mercy of our emotions. We are their masters. The question now is, will we rise to the challenge? Will we, like the Stoics before us, choose the path of detachment, the path that leads to true freedom? The choice is ours.